This video is all about how grief can come up in layers. So it reveals itself in layers. And I want to talk to you about something that happened to me literally just the other day. And so that's exactly what I mean about it can show up in layers even years later. So this is a very sensitive topic. So I'm just warning people in advance that it is a little bit more emotional. It could trigger some emotions for certain individuals. And so the most important thing about that and in this particular piece is that if you feel that that's something that you're not quite ready to witness or observe, then I would recommend maybe leaving this video for another time. Because one of the things that I also talk about is how when we are acknowledging and revealing grief and we're revealing the different layers that are coming up in our journey, it can be very emotional. It can be very taxing on our energy levels and taxing on our emotions. And so it's extremely important that we protect our energy in these times. And so therefore, again, just stating that importance right off the bat. So this video, I wanted to share the vulnerability and the authenticity of our journeys. And this particular journey will relate back to my cancer journey. And there will be other videos that I will be exploring in the coming weeks, having to do with other levels of crisis that I experienced alongside of my family. But for today, this is going back into my first initial diagnosis, which was in 2012. It was October 2012, actually, in fact. And so one of the things that I didn't even recognize at the time when I was first diagnosed was that we often will go straight into survival mode. So this particular day was, of course, obviously very raw, very real, and very shocking. And so, as I was saying earlier, immediately we go into crisis mode. We go into survival mode. So the non-essential functions just simply cease to exist at that moment. You are literally surviving and looking to see what is going to unfold for you next. Especially when it's a health crisis, there are a lot of questions that come up. There are a lot of fears that come up. And when you've never navigated anything like that in the past, you don't know what to expect. And it's extremely shocking. There was no history in my family either. So for me, at 35 at the time, and a single mom, it was extremely scary. So what I wanted to talk about specifically was this particular, I'm going to call it, it was sort of essentially a visualization that happened to me when I was in a awake state. I was having some troubles with sleep and some insomnia, I guess, over the last couple of days. And there's no rhyme or reason for it, but just sometimes that happens. We have these periods where we just don't sleep. And not particularly feeling any anxiety or any depression or anything like that. Just simply wasn't capable of shutting down my brain. And in fact, I was in great spirits because I was creating some content, new content for all of you, but I was also excited about an author event that I had the very next day. So maybe some of that is, right? We know sometimes when we're going on a trip, we get very excited the night before we're leaving, and that can happen. But this particular incident really shocked me. So this what I would call a layer of grief that came out of nowhere for me when I was in a awake state and listening to some meditative music. So I recognized that I was just struggling with sleep, struggling with quieting my brain, and I thought the best thing was to do some meditation and music listening. So I have like a headband that I put over. A good friend of mine recommended that to me. And so I ended up purchasing that, and it just simply covers your head as opposed to using earbuds. And it worked very, very well. So as I was listening to this meditative music, and there was some sort of, piano, little plunks of piano that were coming in, I was instantly transported back to that night, the first night of my diagnosis. I remember being in my living room, and again, remember, this wasn't a dream. This was actually a memory coming back for me. And though I don't have a lot of memory, clear memory of that particular day and what exactly happened moment to moment, because we don't, when we go through trauma, we also tend to forget what happened, because that's our brain's way of protecting us. So I remember seeing my upright piano that I had at the time in my living room, and loved that thing. Of course, then I found out, because I was renting at the time, I found out that it was buckling the floorboards, so I had to get rid of it. It was very sad. But what I would do sometimes when I couldn't sleep is go down and plunk on that piano and just sort of create tunes and that sort of thing. It was very, that was my sort of meditation at the time, and music for me is a very meditative and beautiful way of expressing my creativity and that sort of thing. So I'll get into that another time, but this particular night, I was very shocked, obviously, from the news, and I didn't know how to process it. So I remember plunking on my piano. And so as I was listening to this music the other night and hearing the plunking of the piano, again, instantly transported back to this memory that I didn't even know I had, that I didn't even know was sort of a layer that it was existing. And then I actually saw myself in my memory walk upstairs to my child's bedroom. And this is where it's going to get, like I said, fairly raw and vulnerable for a lot of you that are that have experienced similar things or are experiencing these things right at this moment. As a parent, your first instinct is to protect your children, first and foremost. So yes, they say put your oxygen mask on first in the airplane, but instinctually we want to protect. We want to ensure that our child or children are feeling safe in a situation of crisis, whether that be health or loss of a loved one or a sudden shakeup in our life that causes that level of crisis and essentially survival mode. We don't have any control anymore. And as a parent, that goes against every single fiber in your being on what it is that you can do to protect your child. So in this visualized memory, I saw my child sleeping soundly in their bed, and I had not told my child yet about my diagnosis. At the time, they were 10 years old, and it just was something that I was trying to navigate in my own mind, let alone telling my child. And we were sort of in that place. We were a team. We were very close, and we still are, which is lovely. But just in that particular time in our life, we were very, very close, and we were having a great time. And in fact, that summer we had a wonderful time going to Canada's Wonderland and just enjoying all these things. But I saw them in this visualized memory, sleeping soundly in their bed, and I just started to cry. In the memory, I know I cried, but I also cried in my wake state. Tears just came out of nowhere. And it was just, as much as I'd like to say it was emotional and it was very challenging, it was also beautiful. So this is why I really wanted to come on to create this specific video, because I want to help guide people through that process. But what I learned about this is that not only was I ready to release it, my nervous system felt ready to reveal it to me. So that was a moment where it felt safe. I'm not currently in crisis at the moment, so it felt safe to reveal this memory to me in that meditative state where my mind was quieted and it had an opportunity to show me what I needed to see so that I could let go, to release that. And then I was able to redefine that. So this is my framework that I work with inside my Treehouse Principle, my Crisis to Creation collective, and within my space, is this reveal, release, redefine framework. because the importance of revealing to yourself, so I don't even mean revealing this to anybody else, I mean revealing it to ourselves, especially in our generation, so Gen X and older generations. We do not talk about our trauma. We were conditioned to suppress it. We were conditioned to sweep it under the 70s shag carpet, as I've said before, and I've written about it. But when we started to unpack the layers of grief and crisis and identity shifts and all of these things within our new normal, we have started to recognize that there are layers that are starting to surface and asking to be acknowledged. Now, here's where I say there's kindness in that. There's kindness in the moment that it asks to be revealed. I literally, truly believe that, because this has been years later. That was in 2012. We're now in 2026. And that was the first diagnosis. The second diagnosis was in 2016. So I'm 10 years removed from the second diagnosis and journey. But the fact that that came up that particular evening, just 2 nights ago, was powerful. And I chose to get curious. So you've heard me talk about this before, getting curious, as opposed to punishing myself for suddenly having to navigate this trauma again. No, I got curious instead, because I realized my body was ready. It had held on to that clearly for years, and I didn't even know. I wasn't even aware. So I started to do a little bit more research. As you've been starting to get into my material, and if you've purchased my book, and again, I will link the URL to the Amazon where you can purchase my book, a copy of my book, The Treehouse Principle. I truly did start to unpack this understanding of the science behind our bodies and what our bodies do best. And again, we're wired for safety. So you've heard me say that before. So instinctively, we will go into that safe space and a non-functioning, only the essential functions. So that's what I mean when I talk about how our system will go into the safe mode. That's another video as well. But I will speak to this where I recognize that layers of grief can surface years later. But why do they come up in layers as opposed to all at once? Because we have a kindness system. Like, our system is essentially designed to save us from more trauma. So it only allows certain things to come to the surface when it feels ready to do so. That's powerful. That's a level of design that far surpassed anything that I ever understood. And it made me so grateful to understand that we literally have this ability to allow for that layer or the next few layers to come to the surface when we're ready. And so I wanted to encourage you in that today. I wanted to encourage you with this video to start to think about, where are you beginning to see layers of grief come to the surface? And what does that look like? And how are you revealing that to yourself? And if you're not ready to release that, that's also okay. But the importance of starting to acknowledge that some of these things are starting to be asked to be revealed and acknowledged, and not suppressed any longer. And so when your system feels safe enough to do so, and you start to allow and acknowledge, that is the time where you can meet yourself where you're at, literally in that moment, and say, okay, we're ready. Let's look at this. Let's observe this, and let's reframe this going forward so that we can empower ourselves as we are moving into the creative phase, which is simply restoring all of those essential functions, where we can tap back into imagination and play and joy and wonder and social activities and whatever else that comes your way. And so please think about that. definitely take time to think about what that looks like for you. I would love to hear from you. So drop some comments below if you feel safe to do so. Let's unpack these things together and tell me what you think about this. If this is actually something that has come up for you. I have just learned about this and I started to do some research, as I was saying, because I didn't even know that that was a possibility, that that is exactly what our systems could do. And so then therefore I figured out that yes, we do have layers of grief that come to the surface when they are ready to be acknowledged and when our system feels safe enough to do so. I really hope you found this helpful. As I said, drop a comment below if this resonated with you and you feel like you are ready to express and expose layers of that grief to yourself. And again, this is a safe space, so please do not comment if you don't feel safe to do so, and please be kind to the other commenters. And I will definitely see you in the next video. Take an opportunity to like and subscribe and comment, and then follow me for more information. And again, follow my vlogs. I will be continuing to create some vlogs that are centered around the Treehouse Principle book. But that's all for today. I just really wanted to share that with you.